it's just a burp. It's completely natural.
No, I know, but I burp and then I think about it and it's like, dude, someone's gonna listen to that with headphones on and it's gonna be like right next to their ear.
ASMR.
I think I think it's a little bit it's kind of it's very intimate when you get close up.
Your microphone is the perfect ASMR microphone.
Yeah.
I don't understand the fetish that is ASMR though. I think my previous girlfriend had something along those lines though.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's intimate.
It's easily exploitable, let me tell you that.
I'll say this, like ASMR is an interesting thing because I can understand how people react to it because it is like a very specific sound that you're getting. But I've never actually dipped my toes in it, so I don't know more than your basic knowledge of what it is.
No, I'm surprised that it actually exploded so as much as it did. It's kind of along the lines of satisfying videos on YouTube. I
Yeah,
myself I cannot for the life of me understand either one of them.
same.
I don't see it. I don't see it at all.
I will say this though, like the videos of people like popping someone else's pimples.
Oh, pimple poppers. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are I get the satisfaction that people get from them. But like the compilations that you're talking about definitely never got them.
But with the
Yeah.
pimple popper though, aren't you completely disgusted by it as well as
100%.
completely invested? You cannot stop
Yes.
watching it. Good.
Yes.
I'm on you.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Well, because here's the thing. I saw one where it was like this huge thing on the
Assist,
back of the neck
probably.
of a guy. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to watch it because I know what's going to happen and I know it's going to be disgusting. But then I sat down and I started watching it and it's like a huge, like they try doing it with their hands and it's not working. So they take out like a scalpel. And that's when they're like, we're going to have to cut this open. And then they do. And then it like explodes and it oozes like mustard and it is disgusting. And so I legitimately gagged. I gagged.
Of
audibly.
course, absolutely. It's because
But I couldn't stop looking.
the consistency. That's so rewarding too. It's. I think her name is Dr. Pimple Popper on YouTube. She's
Probably.
very interesting because she actually does the entire operation thing and is sort of educational about it while extremely casual. So she's the best one out there. Other ones are just.
I don't think I
roads.
turned on the audio.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has like a reality TV show too, where you get to meet the patient and everything. So that kind of thing like escalated. It's insane.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The things that we give power to as audience members is ridiculous. Just
I think it's a
insane.
human thing. Satisfactory ASMR, pimple popping. It's just like it's very human to be appealed to those things.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
I think it's just our morbid curiosity getting the best of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to season 4 of Films and Fika. This is the podcast where we talk about films, movies, and everything in between. Mostly movies, though. We have a cup of coffee, also known as a Fika, with us.
No cup of coffee for me today.
No
it's way too warm. I will start sweating. No one wants to see that. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I'm doing iced coffee today.
You basic son of a...
I don't know if that breaks the rules, though. I was like, I was preparing it, and I was like, does this go against it? Like, is this heresy? Is this illegal for the Swedish people? Am I gonna get burned?
Absolutely not. As a 10-year-old, you would have lemonade parties in the gardens. It's an entire thing. So lemonade definitely has a place on the table, on the Fika table, on the smorgasbord of Fika. Yeah.
You really like that word.
Smorgasbord?
Yeah.
It's a good word.
I've never heard anyone use it as like, no, realistically, I had never heard anyone in person use it properly in a sentence before I met you. And then you use it quite like often.
Well, the funny thing is that Swedes don't really use the word smorgasbord. But it is very common in the English language, just like what's it called? They have a lot of German words.
No, Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude. Like, it's a surprisingly common word in the English language. It's very weird that the English language doesn't have their own word for it. But smorgasbord, it's an activity, yes, to have a smorgasbord in Sweden, but we don't use the word as a
adjective.
Yes,
I think that's what it is.
That
I think it's a very English thing to do, to like adopt words and try not to change them and just use them. And not even like in the English language, but other languages do it too. Like in Spanish, a lot of the terms, like newer terms that have to do with technology specifically, we just use the English word, and we kind of like, I would say Spanish, like Spanish it.
What's it called when you mix Spanish and English, though? There must be
Spanglish.
Yeah, you kind of do a Spanglish version of it. I think most languages do that. Of course, if you say smorgasbord or Schadenfreude, that's not the way you would pronounce it in the language itself, but it's very close to the original language. In the film Parasite that we're going to talk about today, you see a lot of English being used in a Korean way. So without the subtitles, I don't necessarily think you would pick up on it.
100%, I think you're right.
But to my understanding, the Japanese and the Korean people especially use a lot of English wordings in their everyday life nowadays.
It makes sense. They're very universal concepts, you know, like in terms of things like the words like okay and perfect and things that have to do with technology and is everything okay kind of stuff. I think it makes sense that certain cultures just prefer to adopt that as a thing instead of trying to come up with ways to say them. Especially, I think it has to do with young people not necessarily caring about it, right? Because a lot of the younger people are like bilingual, at least in their mother tongue and English. So
English or their second language.
Yeah, so it's just easier for them to just adapt it. And my mother hates it. Oh, she hates it.
Yes, I was about to say, like, my father has a big time issue when I do Swinglish, the Swedish English kind of thing, when I just mix in English words. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh yeah, this and that. And he's like, no, what is it in Swedish? And I'm like, I really don't know. So I multiple times turn to my sisters and they will translate the words that I've completely lost because I only know the English word.
No, that happened to me a lot while I was in Canada, and my mom hated it, and she still hates it because it still happens to me. But she's like, we'll be having a conversation, I'll say a word, and it either doesn't exist in Spanish the same way as it does in English, and I'm trying to just like translate it literally, and it does not apply. So she makes fun of me, obviously, because she also reads a lot of books. So she has a very wide vocabulary. So when that happens to me, she's just like, read a fucking book. Just read a fucking book.
And I mean, you can't really blame them. I don't think you can.
Of course not.
But I don't want to blame myself either. I thrill. That's not a correct use of that word. But I'm like, I love it when you find a person who speak as much Swinglish as I do, because that means you can literally say each other word in a different language, maybe even mix in a third language, because why not? It's hilarious. And it's really, I love it when you're able to just mix and match and speak freely. With my father, you can't. You can't. I have to focus on actually speaking mostly Swedish. It's a struggle.
I get it 100%.
So on this podcast, we usually like to recommend movies, podcast, media, for anything really at least some sort of recommendation, something that you have seen or enjoyed or watched. Maybe it's just a happening in your life. What you have for me, Mao? What have
So
happened to you the previous week?
it's been a week, which is nice because we have the time to record more episodes, and I'm
Woo!
having a lot of fun. But basically, I've been watching a lot of stuff, and I'm taking this time to try and like figure out if I like older movies as much as I think I do or not.
Okay.
So that led me down this path of trying to find movies that star Ingrid Bergman, who I adore.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I think I think she's great, and I thought
she is great.
yeah. So I'm starting to look into it, and while doing that, I came across this documentary, and it's called Ingrid Bergman in her own words, I think it's called, and I'll write it properly in the description below. But basically, it tells her life because she documented everything. She took her film camera with her all the time. She loved taking pictures, and she communicated through letters with a lot of the close people in her life because she kept moving around because she was, a film star, and she didn't really like having roots. And so all of those things are saved and they're available for people to see. And so they put them all together into this documentary, and they talk about her life, and they interview her children, and you'll hear, she also kept various diaries. So they have Alicia Vikander read out her diaries as like narration throughout the documentary. And I think it was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting, and I think it was really personal and kind of intimate because you hear all of her inner thoughts about the things that are happening in her life.
It's
So that was
really
really fun.
unusual to get such a first perspective in a documentary
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
100%. Yeah. And I think what's really cool is that she didn't stick to the norms of the time. Like she got divorced twice, which was, especially for American people, was unheard of, and they really shamed her for it. And that's why she eventually stopped working in America and the Hollywood system, because not only was she angry at the backlash, but also the studio stopped hiring her because people wanted to boycott her, and they didn't want her to be in the screens. They didn't want her to be part of the TV interview late night shows. So she lived an interesting life in that way. And it's kind of, I think it's very personal and very interesting to get to hear what she thought of those things as they were happening. So yeah, I think that was really good. And just like a small recommendation, if people aren't into documentaries or into Ingrid Bergman or any other like that, I watched The Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock. And it's my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film, I think, or one of my favorites. And I think it's really fun. And it's not in black and white, so that helps a lot of people because it's in color and it's in English. And it's a lot of fun. And I think it's actually very relatable to what we're going through right now, because it's about a reporter who's stuck inside. He can't leave his apartment, and it's kind of like how he deals with this situation. And I think it's fun, and I think it's relatable, and it's a really, really good movie. It holds up. So those would be my two things to recommend.
Amazing. I'll try and make sure to check out that Ingrid Bergman documentary. That sounds really interesting, just in pure concept format, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like a lot of it is in Swedish. Obviously, she was Swedish. Like her letters are in Swedish and her diaries are in Swedish. But I think it's worth it because Alicia Vikander, she has a great voice, and she has a very appropriate tone to when she's reading it out loud, and it's really cool.
So my recommendation is a YouTube channel, actually, or a YouTube series that I think you as well will agree on, and that would be VFX Artist React. It's by Corridor
Yes.
Digital, which is one of my biggest inspirations, like throughout. They are amazing with their action and visual. What's it called? Their VFX works simply enough. They've been around on the internet for a long time and are really among the best ones out there when it comes to stories on YouTube. Simply enough. I think a few months back now, they started making VFX artists react. You've probably seen it in your trending page on YouTube if you ever are on YouTube. Regardless, they have VFX artists reacts. They have stuntmen, stunt women reacts, and also no, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Most recently, they did an episode on Bollywood and how completely insane Bollywood is. Insane. Both with their VFX work, but also with their stunt, essentially. The wire work and everything like that. I find, because I mean, VFX and CGI has always been something that has intrigued me. But after seeing this series actually they're not necessarily breaking shots down, but they go into it. You only learn so much from watching behind the scenes footage and breakdown videos online, but actually hearing these guys who know what you're talking about, it's very educational, and you learn a lot about CGI. And I think ever since the first episode, I haven't seen a movie with a lot of CGI in the same way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think here's what I think is really cool about these videos is that, like you said, they do go into it and they do talk about the technicality and the prowess that these different shots have or don't have, but they don't necessarily make it boring because they're all very fun. Like their dynamic is very fun and they are having fun. So then it's very easy to get into them. And I think, like you said, I have a new respect and like new way of viewing VFX in movies. And now when I see a VFX that is necessarily not the best or that looks kind of obvious, all I can think of like is, maybe that guy or that group of people didn't have enough time to actually work on the specificity or on the quality of it. And so now it's more of like it's not that VFX artists are not good, it's just that they didn't have enough time. And even just the small things kind of blow my mind now because it's really just cool to see that.
It is a very underrated piece of crew on a movie. It's very underrated, or artists. It's completely fair to call them. They are very underrated as artists, and therefore aren't given the budget and the time they need to really perfect their craft. Considering how something like cinematography, like the budget that is given in comparison, it all comes down to something that you see directly. But good CGI by heart essentially is CGI that isn't noticeable.
Well, like, here's what I think about that is just people, and specifically the people with the money, look at a movie and they're like, okay, without a camera, without proper camera gear, without a proper cinematographer, without proper lighting, this movie's gonna bomb, right? Because that's what they see. That's the obvious part of it. But VFX, like you said, is so subtle and it's so overlooked that people don't take the time to actually understand what it needs to work. Like it's supposed to feel like magic, but it's not magic. Like it takes a fuck ton of hours and a fuck ton of work and a lot of people to make a shot look like it's magic. So I think that's what it comes down to. Like people just don't understand it that way.
It's your classic, typical thing of like, the client is always gonna want the biggest and baddest camera, while you can shoot a movie on an iPhone and it will be just as good. It's the content that matters.
Yeah.
So with that out of the way, do you want to jump into the movie directly, or do you have
Yeah, for
anything
sure.
else?
We can go.
Are you
Uh,
cool
I'm
with that?
actually I'm excited to talk about this movie for various reasons, but I feel um, I think what makes me excited about this movie is that I haven't been able to talk about it with someone properly. Like I went and saw it with my brother, and it was fun, and he was like into it, but like properly sit down and talk about it, I haven't been able to do it. And even though a lot of people have sat down and like recorded videos or done podcasts or written articles
Mm-hmm.
about it, and then it won Best Picture at the Oscars, and then it became even like a bigger thing. I just haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk with someone about it, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
And
Ironically enough, right? Because I mean, it exploded on Cannes. I assume it probably did a few festivals before that, or no? You have to premiere on Cannes, don't you?
I think I think they premiered Cannes.
Oh, okay. Regardless, it got the Palme d'Or. I'm mispronouncing that, but already from the start, like it got the best reward, and I think it's fair to say that it is slightly better than an Oscar to get the highest ranking award in the Cannes Film Festival. Like, whoa!
But here's the thing about Cannes, though. Like for a while now, Cannes has had a very specific type of movie that wins the Palme d'Or, and I don't think this movie fits that, and I think that's why it kind of won like everything that it won, because it doesn't fit necessarily into a category, into a genre, into all these ideas that we have of movies. And I think, and we'll get more into it as we talk about it, but we'll start this the right way and say that we're talking about Parasite. In case you didn't catch that, we're talking about Parasite by Bong Joon Ho. It's a movie that came out last year, and it exploded. And it was written by Bong Joon Ho and Han Jin Won. And I think this is also a really good moment to say sorry for all the names that are going to get butchered, because we're not great with pronunciations. So
Especially
sorry beforehand.
Yeah, especially the Asian name structure is very foreign to both of us, being from the West.
Yeah, 100%.
So deepest apologies.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it got released last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it came here like November to Sweden, which is fairly late considering how long it has been out. Yeah. But considering it got released later in Sweden, it stayed in theaters all the way till the Oscars, and even slightly after Oscars, after it won. It got 3 Oscars, right, for writing, Best Picture, and International Picture, right?
Right. No, didn't it get editing?
Editing.
I'll look it up. But keep going.
I don't think so. So I mean, I think that says a lot about it. So it's kind of ironic that you're saying that you haven't necessarily spoken about it to someone. Sure, I've spoken to someone about it, but not as in depth that I hope that we will get into for sure. But it's gotten a lot of publicity, and I think therefore a lot of hype. There has been a lot of people who go to see it that normally wouldn't see that type of movie, I find. I find it to be one of those films where you either love it or hate it. At least my experience speaking to a few different people, that is definitely the case. Where you either love the tone and everything of the film, or it sits well with you, or it really doesn't. It's just creepy and disturbing.
That's fair.
But I think it has to do your expectations with it. Like, considering it got that much publicity, it's unusual for a Korean film, first of all, for a foreign film, even more so. And not a lot of people are used to hearing a foreign language or seeing the Korean darkness that is in most Korean films.
Yeah, no, 100%. So just really quickly, to be, clear, kind of, it won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Foreign Film.
Okay.
So no editing. That was my bad. I think it's mostly because I wanted it to win best editing,
And
but
it got
you know,
the Golden Globe as well, no? For movie, for feature,
probably, yeah.
It got at least a Golden Globe for something. So a lot of prizes.
It won best foreign language film at the Golden Globes.
I adored Bong on the Oscars when he received his first prize. He was already like so ready to drink that night, and I think he said it the second time he went up on stage that he wasn't expecting any prizes at all, and he was so humble throughout. And yeah, man, it was adorable seeing him so overwhelmed receiving these 100%. Prizes.
And I think it comes down to what you were saying, right? Like, making a foreign film is already an issue when you speak any other language than English, obviously, and you're gonna have to subtitle your film. But I feel even within that, there's some languages that people are willing to accept, and by people I mean like English-speaking audiences. Is I think Spanish and French are kind of like more okay because they sound similar to English, and I think people are able to sit down and watch them easily. But as soon as you start getting like into the Asian languages like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and then also some of the European ones like Russian, and I'm sure Swedish is in there, because they sound so different and they have such a different tone and ring to them. I feel people get even further turned off from them. So I feel it's very cool and exciting to see that people are like willing to go see this movie. And sure, it had to do with a lot of the hype and a lot of the media attention that it was getting that made people want to be part of it, right? And it's like, oh, I don't want to be that guy that hasn't seen it, or I don't want to be the person who doesn't know who's talking about like what people are talking about. But I feel at least it helped open the door for a lot of people to be like, oh, there is a different type of movie made out there, and there is a different type of storytelling, and maybe it's just not in the English language, but it's very much so worth checking out. And I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
So
a short plot.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like a short plot. So the movie's about the Kim family, and they are a working class family, and they're struggling at the start of the movie. And the story is how they come across the Park family, who are wealthy, and the son of the Kim family hatches a plan to infiltrate the lives of the Parks. And I think that's as much as I'm comfortable giving away, because the movie is so much more.
No, for sure. We shouldn't go further. You're always so afraid to develop those, though.
Here's the thing. I started having this thing where it's like I would rather not know what a movie's about and then walk into it and be completely blown away. And I think almost always I have a better experience with it because of it. And I've been trying that with my brother, because since I moved back to Mexico, he's kind of been like my movie buddy, and I take him to every kind of movie that I want to see, because I don't like going to the theater alone, because I'm not I can't do it. Like, to me, it would be too weird to walk into the movie theater alone. And I think it's just because I've always done it with other people. But so I tell my brother, like, we're going to go watch this movie. And he's always like, so what's it about? And I'm like, I have no idea. And at first it really frustrated him, but I think he's trying to get the idea behind why I do it. And it's always hilarious to walk out of a movie like this, or like The Lighthouse, and him just being like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's really fun.
But it kind of comes back to what I was trying to say. It's like, if you go in with zero expectations of the films, if you know nothing about it, at least that's what I heard someone someone told or had a story about how they went into the film without even knowing it was in Korean, and they, of course, hated it because, well, they weren't the most common moviegoer or the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't seen too many films in their days, or so I gathered. So they didn't enjoy it at all. So it's really
Yeah.
It's either a win or lose situation with this.
For sure.
Regardless, it is worth a watch, considering how many rewards it has gotten. If that's not encouraging enough to go watch it, then for sure. If you, however, do enjoy thrillers, it's a must watch. If you do enjoy foreign films, especially Eastern, it's a must watch. I have a sweet spot for Japanese and Korean films. I think I should have that said before we get into the nitty gritty. I absolutely loved it, but in a weird way. It really sticks with you, and I love it. But it's a really good film.
I agree. And basically, those are my same like spoiler-free thoughts. Is just go watch it if you haven't. If you're like in the small part of the population of the world that hasn't seen it because of the hype or because you're not sure you might like it, I think you should definitely give it a try, even though there's so many things about it, and just walk into it without unnecessary expectations, and just strap on and be ready for a ride, because I think it's really good.
Yeah, put your strap on, man. Because there's absolutely no way you're able to figure out where this film is going by the end of it. No way. So with that said, let's get into the spoilers of the film. So this is your official spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it now. Come back to the podcast after you have. And Mao, let's get into the conversation of the film. So it's really great, and it's very, I find, metaphorical. It has a really good message, but I think by the end of it, when Godzilla arrives there at the ocean, I think that's a little bit over the top. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I didn't like that Godzilla just showed up out of nowhere. I was like, this is a different country, man. Like, respect the line. Like, you can step over Japan however many movies you want to, but like, Korea is a different country. Get your shit right.
That's racist, bro.
No, but I think, seriously speaking, I think this is one of the movies that has one of the best kind of like midpoint of any movie, just because there's such a big before and after the event. You know, like the tone changes, the way they handle time within the story changes, the characters change, their motivations change. Everything kind of gets like fucked up by this thing that happens right in the middle of the movie. And I think it's just, I think what I want to talk about to start with is the script, because I think the script helps make this movie what it is, right? Because it's written in a way where it's very well balanced, right? Like, there's some comedy in it, there's some thriller in it, there's some like family dynamics and human nature, and Bong Joon Ho manages to, as much as his co-writer is with him, they both manage to hit like the right spot and balance all of these things out. And I think it's such a good film. And I think that's gonna be what it all comes down to in this episode, is just us being like, it's just so good. It's just really good. But we can try and use other words.
I wanted to ask you though, because on IMDb and everywhere else, it is, I think, thriller, comedy, and drama, I think, are the main genres for the film officially.
Probably, yeah.
Now, on a second watch, I still don't truly see the comedy. Is it just because it's so foreign to me, the type of comedy? Is it cultural like that? Because I haven't laughed a single time seeing this film.
I think it definitely has to do with culture, but it's probably just like, it has to do with sense of humor. It's not like a Charlie Chaplin, or it's not you know, the type of comedy that I know that you really enjoy. It's a very dark kind of comedy where it's like you shouldn't be laughing at it, and it's more of like a nervous laughter, like oh, that just
Mm.
happened, you know, like
I can
um
see like the physical comedy. I can understand, especially when you see the dude in the basement. He's
mhm,
creepily. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. You can laugh out of nervous laughter, for sure.
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Mm, yeah. Does
It
that
is a
make
lot
it a
of that.
comedy
And
though? I guess I can see for the Korean people it is a comedy. I can buy that. It's just
well,
strange to
I
me
think,
how it's how it's
yeah,
advertised like it.
I feel the advertising for it is such an interesting creature on its own, because they had to, like, no international movie has gotten this big of a reception and this big of a, like a
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
what's it called, release. Like you said, like, it came to Mexico, I think it was either end of November or mid-December, and last time I went to the theaters it was still on,
Yeah.
and we're talking about like mid-March or early March. So I think even when you talk about the advertisement of it, they had to get really creative because they had to advertise a very Korean movie. And
Mm.
you and I have seen other Korean movies, and we know how easy it is for them to be really dark and very creepy and very twisted. But for a lot of people, that is shocking
Mm.
still. Um,
Then
so they
again,
had to find ways to sell this movie, and I think that's why they kind of appeal to the comedic side of it, because it would be easier to sell.
yeah. Then again, it is. I mean, while it is a very Korean film at heart, by all essence, it is. Um, it might have to do with Bong's work in the States, like Snowpiercer,
Mm,
like Okja is one of them. That is very
yeah.
a good blend between American and Asian cultures. This is different from those two. This is a completely Eastern film. Yet, I think they have worked into, if it is out of a pure market reasoning or not, it is. It has its aspects of internationality, especially with the English
Yes.
language, I would say.
I think what works really well with it is that Bong Joon Ho didn't want to make an international movie. He wanted to tell a story very much rooted in Korea and the reality that he lives within the country. And I'm sure there's so many things within the movie that we don't understand as foreigners, or that we don't see what it's trying to reference or what it's trying to comment on,
Mm,
because we're not Korean, we're
mm,
not part of that culture. But I am a very big believer that when you tell a very specific story, there's something interesting about how it manages to appeal to a general audience. Even though you're talking about something so specific, people manage to relate to it even more so than when you try to make a very relatable film or a very general film or like something that will sell very good. There's something about specificity that talks to us on a human level. And I
mm.
think he kind of nailed it in this
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Because, like you said, Snowpiercer and Noksha and some of his other works, if not all of his other works, they all talk about, the same themes about social structure and capitalism and all these other
yeah.
things that we can get to later in the conversation. But for some reason, this time it managed to hit all the right notes. And I think it's mostly because he perfected his craft. Like, this movie feels so
Oh yeah.
detailed and so very,
Mm,
like, he cared about this film
mm.
with so much of himself,
Yeah.
that everything seems very
I can see how it's
like
kind of like
taken care of.
meticulous in
Yes.
lack of words. Like it's not meticulous in a bad way, but the attention to detail is great. Uh,
Yes.
Everything from the visual style, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I have this thing where I have a folder with full of screenshots from movies. Uh, Dude, I took so many screenshots from this film. The use of
Yeah.
reflections and the oh man, it's simply beautiful. The characters and everything, the story, it just feels so real. And the montage, the editing. Yeah, man. Do you think, though, honestly, that it deserves international movie as well as Best Picture from the Academy Award? I myself thought, I can bring up my ballot if you don't believe me, but I did think, considering the publicity it had gotten, I expected it to get Best Picture. I'm not sure if it deserves international as well on top of that. That's a lot. Do you agree? Do you not?
Here's the thing.
Is it that good that it deserves two of... I myself see international movie as one of the greater rewards, but those two, as well as editing on top of it, I think it deserves editing for sure. But maybe just go with one of the other.
Here's my take on it, because I agree that winning both means a lot, because that's basically saying that it was the best movie of the year, period. Like nothing else topped it. And like in terms of what there was in the Oscars, I do think it was the best movie.
Yeah.
Out of all of them, the ones that were nominated
for Best Picture, you mean?
Yeah. Mostly because I'm having trouble remembering which ones were the other like foreign films. But
1917 Ford versus Ferrari.
No, those were the best ones, like the Best Picture ones. But what were the
international
foreign? Yeah.
Are you looking them up?
Give me a second. Yeah, I'm looking them up. So it was Corpus Christi, Honeyland, Les Miserables, Pain and Glory, and Parasite. And out of those, I saw 3 out of those 5. And out of the three that I did see, I do think Parasite's the best one.
It is the best one, but that's not how the Academy usually works. So why does it?
I know.
Yeah.
And based on how the Academy does work, this is what I think happened. I agree with you. I thought there was a huge possibility of Parasite winning Best Picture, especially because Roma was so close last year of doing it as well.
It's true.
But I still think that a lot of the people within the Academy weren't sure that it was going to do it, and they didn't want it to not get either of them. So they voted for it on the international, like foreign film, so that it was like a sure thing. Like that will be the award that it wins. And I think then the other ones were just like the cherry on top of everything else.
Yeah.
I think it deserved it. I think it deserves everything that it's been talked for about, the script was really good. The direction, like I said, was like, I don't want to use words like perfect, but he hits all the points that he wants to, and he directs the living shit out of it, right? Like the house was built specifically for the movie because he needed it to be very specific to the story. He needed the house to be a specific shape so that the story worked. And so when he needed a character to be spying on the other characters, or like this character being able to listen or hear the other characters talking without them being seen, all of these very specific scenarios that he thought for the script, he then translated those ideas to his production designer. And the production designer had to go with actual architects and talk to them and be like, yo, this is what it's needed. Does it make sense? If it doesn't make sense, how can we achieve it so that it makes sense? And, that's just on the house. But then for the scene where it's raining and the street is flooded and the semi-basement is flooded, they built all of that on top of a pool so that they could flood it, and it sounds insane.
Whoa.
Yeah. Exactly.
How is that even structurally possible? That sounds like...
I have no idea.
Whoa.
And it sounds like such a big thing, and it sounds like one of those stories out of old Hollywood.
I guess it's not like a huge set, but like
but it seems like it.
Man. Because I was kind of thinking to myself whether or not, I don't know the budget, we could bring it up if it's at all interesting, but regardless if it's a cheap or not film, it's fairly simple with its logistics. Surely not.
Mhm.
It has a lot of locations when they're sitting at the pizza parlor having pizza, blah yada yada, and especially
Mhm.
by around the third act, there's more locations that are just popping up, but those are mostly on location, I think. Um,
Probably.
it's really just the main mansion that they're at, the villa. Uh, it's one location, so
Yeah.
it's very simple logistically to film it, and it has quite a few characters. It does, and that's where
Mhm.
the script comes in, and it's completely everyone has their own arc, etc., and it works
Mhm.
perfectly. But it's not that difficult of a concept to swallow. What is
Mm.
difficult to swallow, however, are you ready to my biggest beef with this film?
Sure. Bring it up.
On a second watch, you do pick up on these like small hints that there is. And again, this is the biggest spoiler of the film. So if you for some reason are still watching, stop and watch the movie.
Yeah.
There are hints throughout that there is a dude living in the basement.
Yes.
And they're so small, they're very well
So
placed,
subtle.
and
Mhm.
they're there. But I mean, I guess they're not supposed to have you figure it out before it actually is revealed. But it's just
Mhm.
such a it's insane. It's like a shock. There's a dude living in the basement. For how
Yeah.
long? Enormously long.
Yeah.
It
It's been a
completely,
while.
even if you were to pay the closest attention on a first watch, you wouldn't be able to even get a sense of something different going on. And I get it. It's Korean, especially. It's Eastern, yada yada. So the shock is what is amazing with the film.
Mhm.
But I feel like uh, it's so out of the world, out of this world of
Mhm.
a concept. So it's just such a big shock. It feels out of place. It
Okay.
plays with the contracts or contrast, however, for sure, and it really puts things into perspective, for sure.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? Is it too big of? Does it become an issue to you? The fact that it's just
Yeah, that it's like so you're saying that it's like so crazy and so out of nowhere that it's kind of like a like are you saying it's like a shock value kind of thing? Like without it the movie wouldn't necessarily be as good or
I I don't know. I don't think that. Of course, the movie wouldn't be the same without this complete. It kind of just turns the movie on its own head all of the
Mhm.
sudden for no specific reason. I don't feel like you get that much of a satisfaction from completely turning around and doing a full 180 like that. Why
Mhm.
not do slightly more traditional and put small hints here and there? At least tonally, have some sort of like, you know,
like a warning sign that it's gonna be
just
like
a
this
little.
turns into a fucked up shit.
I love it for it though, and I think that it's more rewatchable for that reason. I think because just when everything is perfect and so it completely turns around, so it's cool.
Yeah.
But is it? I feel like it's a bit out of place, to be honest.
Okay.
It's a bit too extreme, in my opinion. That's
Here's
that.
what here's the thing. So I've seen the movie 4 times
Oh
now.
shit!
And I love the little hints that are there because once you know what's going on and you see them, they're insane because they're so obvious to an extent. But because, like you said, it's such an extreme change and such an extreme situation that your brain never goes there. But once you know what is actually going on, the symbols are very obvious to you, right? And at first what might seem like an interesting directing decision, like having the lights on the stairs turn on one by one as the guy goes up the stairs. The second time you watch it and you see that, it's like it's because there's a dude underneath,
Mm.
like turning them on as he goes up the stairs, or like when Mr. Park says, "Oh, I really liked our housekeeper and she was a great cook, but she did eat like enough for two people." And you're like, "'Cause
Yeah.
there are two people." And I think it is such a shocking thing. And like you say, I've whoever watches this film the first time and they have the balls to say like, "Oh, I totally saw it
No.
coming."
No.
I don't believe it. Like, there's no way.
I don't think you're
Like,
supposed to, and I can respect that.
exactly.
It's just,
And that's why I think it has to be so extreme.
yeah.
And
And
I
it
think
works. It works.
yeah. I think that's the bottom line of it. It's just that if it wasn't that extreme, people would have seen it coming, you know?
Yeah.
And
I just feel like it's really two different films. The first half of
It is.
it's more lighthearted. The second half of it is morbid as fuck.
Yes.
So again, it plays with the contrasts of the two. And I mean, I guess it does that on a deeper level too with classes. It plays with the contrast.
Yes.
So that's the movie as a whole, for sure. It's just so extreme, dude. It's so yeah.
I agree. And they are two different films. And Bong Joon Ho himself has spoken about this and about how he also feels that it's two different films. And I think that's something that I really, really love because of it. You know? Because the first film is so much fun and it feels kind of like a heist movie. It feels like they're hatching up this plan and you're on board with it, and the amazing use of like montages by the editor is to die for. Like, I really, really enjoy it. And the cross cutting between the different aspects of the plan is great. And then the second half of it is just this very dark and kind of hard to swallow, hard to see movie that talks about, you know, class and how society deals with it. And I think it works because of that, because it's not trying to feed you all this stuff and then lead to a message. I feel it's trying to behave like real life does sometimes, you know, when you're living in like this beautiful ignorance and you don't know what's going on, and then something slaps you across the face and you're like, oh, this world is shit, you know? And it happens like that. Like, you just one day you notice it and then you can't unsee it, and it's always going to be there. And I think that's mostly why it works, because it is so extreme.
Well put. Well put. I want to talk a little bit about, well, the two families. The rich and the poor, essentially.
Yes.
Like, to me, I mean, of course, you have the entire message of classes and yada yada. You can go into that if you want to, however much. But it kind of piqued my interest of how it's really a moral and ethical play with this, because of course the poor family, what's their name? Like
Kim.
The Kim family. Okay. The Kim family is immoral, or rather unethical, in the sense that they are con artists. They are living off rich people without them knowing, which, by the way, is hilarious.
Yes.
You could argue that they're Robin Hood. They're doing it for the better, or for their own better. But they do have kind of bad morals themselves. They don't see anything wrong with stealing from the rich, from manipulating people and firing all of these other working class people, presumably. At the same time, the rich family is living in such a high life. They're, as you say, they're neglecting any worries, and they're so naive to the outside world, the problems of the world. And I think what scene is that? I think it's the the dad and the mom in the poor family, who says something along the lines of like, well, the father says he's speaking about the rich father. It's like he's nice because even though he's rich, and the mother corrects him like he's nice because he's rich. I like that sentence or conversation between the two.
Like this idea that money soothes all the rough edges of a person. You know, it's like
that's one way to put it. Money, the money buys happiness. You mean?
No, not necessarily happiness, but more like exactly what she's saying. Like because she has all this money, or because they have all this money, they have the luxury or the opportunity to be nice people.
Right.
And it's, I think what you're talking about, how the Parks are so, let's say morally gray, right? Because there's things that they had them fired, like they didn't kill them, right? Especially with us, like with the housekeeper, they could have fed her a peach or like hidden her medication, but they didn't want to kill her. They just wanted her out of the way.
And then again, the mother didn't really question it. She was ready to fire her after just realizing that she has a sickness. Speak to her, like have a conversation. No, just fire her. We don't want to have a bad rep within the neighborhood.
Exactly. And I think that's kind of key to the Parks, the rich family, especially the mom, because she's the one who we spend the most time with, right? And we know that she has this reputation of being, I think in the movie they say she's simple, right? And it's like, yes, she is like that, but it's because she's never had to do anything, right? And sure, the Kims manipulate them, and they are actively taking their money, but they're not, like, they're working for it. At least the two parents, you know, because being a housekeeper is a lot of work, and driving people around is a lot of work.
I mean, Kevin is just making up with this girl. How hard can that be?
Yeah. And Jessica just sits around and tells Mrs. Park about how she's helping her son with art therapy and all that.
Then again, the two siblings are the leaders, or the minds, the great minds behind the entire.
Oh yeah,
it's funny.
It's really funny, and I feel when it comes to the morally ambiguous part of the movie, because that's exactly what it is. And there's a point where you're like, am I supposed to be rooting for them? Like, I really don't want them to get caught or anything, but we also understand that they're not necessarily bad people.
No, and I think it becomes very clear when they legit feel bad about trapping these two people in the basement. They want to check in on them during the party, and they don't want to ruin their lives, but they have to protect their own skin during this, so they go to the extreme, even though they are equals in that sense.
And I think the movie touches on selfishness a lot, you know, because on the one hand, it's like you said, the Kims are willing to do anything to protect their lifestyle that they have now come, like, now they're happy with where they are, you know, they're comfortable. And when something comes out of this, you know,
out of nowhere.
Exactly. And they could have been like, you know what, fuck it, we'll feed the husband once a week. But for some reason, they thought of their situation as so fragile that they didn't want to mess with it, and they didn't want to put it in danger for someone else. And the Parks do it all the time, you know, like, and like you said, they live in a bubble that doesn't let them see how anything affects the other world, or the other part of the world that is not within their bubble. And I think you can see that in the scene with the rain, right? Like, the storm completely destroys the Kim's lives in a lot of ways, but mostly like their livelihood, their apartment, their belongings, everything is ruined by this storm. And for the Parks, the storm is great. Like,
Yeah.
sure, their camping trip got canceled, but the mom is talking about it on the phone when she's getting the whole party together. She's like, "Oh, the air is more breathable. The sky is bright. The sun is shining. We can do this party." And it's like the best thing that ever happened to them. But for a lot of the people, not only the Kims, but everyone who lived around them and in this
Yeah.
same situation, the storm represented a huge um
Well,
like natural disaster,
mhm, mhm.
basically, you know?
And I think
And I
that montage itself is my favorite out of all of them, because you see the contrast. You
Mhm.
intercut between people literally fighting for clothing, while we see the mom just picking out of her closet like it's nothing.
Mhm.
It's really nice, that one. Um,
Yeah, I think it's good. Um
but then again, I like the real thing about this film is that you see the Kim family, and
mhm.
they, especially when they have the house for themselves, you see how they truly desire a higher life, if you want to call it that,
Mhm.
a richer lifestyle. They don't mind
Yeah.
that at all. They try, and especially Kevin struggles a bit with finding his own place within that completely different world from what he's
Yeah.
used to. While, well, the rich family is just so um, oblivious to what sort of impact some rain has to other people at the same
Mhm.
time. I mean, heck, the rich dad doesn't even necessarily love his wife. So when you look at it from a perspective, the rich family, well, money buys happiness, sure, but I think that's what they're trying to communicate, that that family is not necessarily happier. They have way more worries
Mhm.
about what kind of like what the art from her kid means, and what that will mean when he grows up, etc. Comparing
Mhm.
it to when the Kims sit around the dinner table and are genuinely happy. They have each
Yeah.
other and are loving of each other, and uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does a very good job of showing both realities.
Uh-huh.
Like in no way is he saying the Kims are better or the Parks are better. And realistically, for example, I've heard that a lot of people are trying to decipher who the parasite is, because the movie's called Parasite, and the quick obvious answer is like, oh, well, the Kims are leeching off
Yeah.
money from the
Yeah.
Parks. But if you think about it, like the Parks are leeching off the Kims' labor. They all say it at one point or another. It's like the mom can't cook, the dad can't drive himself around, they don't like the subway, they rely
they
on the
they can't even
job. And
stand the smell from someone below them.
exactly, and like, so that's also very parasitic, because how we don't even know how much they're paying any of them,
Hmm.
right? And we don't know how long each of them has to work. We don't know we don't know the working conditions, but we can assume that they're okay because they're earning the money. But
Regardless,
still,
it is pretty
you know,
difficult work for being a housekeeper and or driver. I mean, he's not only a driver; he's a personal assistant, if anything.
kind of, yeah. And so I feel the movie balances this very well. And it's like, of course, we might like the Kims better because we spend more time with them and because they're protagonists and because we are privy to their emotional situation and we can empathize with them. But I feel the movie does a really good job of establishing both families as different entities that we
Hmm.
can understand
Hmm.
to an extent, and like it's not like they're good or bad, and it's not making a commentary about that. I feel the movie's just trying to say, like, be conscious, be aware of the other, like, of other people's situation and what they might be going through.
Because I mean, I guess ideally you would be somewhere in the middle where you're still
Mm-hmm.
grounded, uh, like what they are not, and while you're still able to enjoy each other's company, like the Kims are on a third level too. There's like people that are have it even worse circumstances. They are living in a basement. They're hiding away. They're locked away
Mhm.
from real life, from an actual life.
Yeah, and I think like talking about the basement and all of that stuff, and it kind of leads to something that I want to talk about. But first of all, did you like the ending? Because I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people have an issue with the ending, which I don't understand because I personally really liked it. But did you like the
As
ending?
we spoke about in the first episode, kind of talking about what kind of movies we like, I do not mind a sad ending. I find it refreshing because we're so used to everybody living happily ever after. It's again very shocking. It's the main beats of the film. It plays with shock, the effect of shock. So
Hmm.
that aspect I might not enjoy as much personally, but I do,
Okay.
however, enjoy that people die simply. It's really nice to have that emotional, like you really feel for them. Their daughter is just like dead all of a sudden, and everything happens so fast, so quickly.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a bit far fetched or out of the blue how Mr. Kim is just all of the sudden, not all of the sudden. I see the intention behind it, but it seems a bit forced that Mr. Kim stabs the father. Again, names. Um,
Mr. Park.
yeah, but the prelogue or epilogue, prelogue, ah, after that, the entire segment after that, where we see Kevin um, working up, gaining money in order to buy the building and let his dad free. It's so sweet, and it goes on for a long time. And again, the editing is
Mm.
beautiful. That entire part is amazing. But then you cut back to Kevin deciphering the message that his father has made.
Hmm.
So my question to you is that all a daydream, or is that a flashback or flash forward, I guess?
Oof. I I think I would like to hit the middle ground on it.
Oh,
So I feel he is working on a plan and he really wants this plan to work, but we don't get to see if it does or it doesn't. For me, it's like he deciphers his dad's message, and I believe that he wants to be able to buy the house and break out his dad. And I think it's genius that we don't get to see if he does or he doesn't, because at the end of the day, that would kind of take away from the movie. And I feel a lot of people don't like not knowing because of what you just said.
mm-hmm.
We are used to happy endings. We're used to knowing exactly what happens after the movie says this is it. Especially as Western audiences, and like with movies like Pixar or like more mainstream movies where the ending is such a clear end point, and I feel that's why a lot of people don't enjoy it. But me personally, I'm on your side, and it's more like, I don't know, like personally, based on who I am as a person, like I said, I would love for this plan of his to work out. But that's all I think that we see. I think we only see him imagining this plan out and working out it. Um,
Absolutely. That's my take on
but
it.
that's it.
I think it's just a daydream. It seems way too unrealistic for him to actually have this happen for him.
Mm,
And I love it. I absolutely love it. Like that last note, amazing. It really
mm,
left me satisfied, even though it's super
I
sad.
agree.
Even though the unsurety, that's a new word of it all, or
Uncertainty.
uncertainty. There is a word for it. Uh,
Yes.
Even though you're uncertain, I really enjoyed how I was left with the credits rolling.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel, man, it's just like you said, it is a sad kind of like a bittersweet kind of thing, and um, but I feel it's the right thing to do, like because otherwise it would either be super unrealistic or super unsatisfying to see that it doesn't work out. right? And I
Yeah.
feel not knowing just makes it all better. In terms of Mr. Kim stabbing Mr. Park, I don't know. I feel you see the buildup coming.
Hmm.
You know, like
It's there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, and here's where I think the key to why he actually does it lies. I feel it all comes down to that scene that you mentioned before where they're all getting drunk and you see that they actually respect and admire and to a certain degree care for the Parks, you know, and they don't think they're bad people and
Hmm.
they admire their work ethic and the fact that they're affluential like people. But and then to be hidden and to listen in on the the Parks conversation about them and how little they think of them. Even I feel it shows how there's two sides to every relationship, and I feel when someone realizes that someone who they respect or someone who they care for or someone who they love doesn't feel the same way, it hurts. But to see that it's not even the same feeling, but to see that it's such a negative opinion, such a dis- despiseful, very mean way that they talk about them, I think that's where the break comes. Like I feel it's like a sense of betrayal, a sense of hurt,
Mm.
and then to see that they actually don't care about them.
Mm.
Like Jessica gets stabbed in front of everyone, and no one bats an eye as much as they do when Da Song faints. And I understand both sides of it. Like I understand the impulse of like as a parent of like, holy shit, my kid is on like my kid's in danger. I should help my kid. It's such an instinct to do so. But I also see the other side of it where it's like there's a corpse lying on the floor, or like a girl who's almost dying on the floor, and all you care about are the keys and all the other things that we see play out. Um, I I think, like you said before, the movie deals in extremes,
Mm. Mm.
but because of the tone, the extremes are needed, and the extremes work. You know?
Hmm. I'm sad now. It's very depressing when you think about it.
Yeah,
Well, regardless, do you have anything else to add to the movie discussion about Parasite? You want to wrap it up?
dude. I want to talk about because I feel it's so genius, and I know that a lot of people have pointed it out, but I was rewatching it and just like I said, how Bong Joon Ho is such a master
Mm.
of his craft, and everything that he's doing is thought through. Um, we only see the Kim family go up or down the stairs at very specific moments in the story,
Okay.
and they all have to do with their perception within a social structure is. So the first time that we see any of them going up the stairs is when Kevin or Kiwoo, whichever name you want to use, but
Oh,
when
yeah.
he has the papers in his hand, like his fake school diploma and stuff, and he is going to the interview. That's the first time we see any of them going up the stairs. Even though when they're folding the pizza boxes, they do go outside. And so we intrinsically know that they had to go up the stairs. But Bong Joon Ho decides to show us when they go up or down the stairs. And I think he's even talked about it. And that's why I don't think I'm a metaphor genius for deciphering this. Like I know other people have picked up on it, and he might have even spoken about this himself. But I think those type of details make the movie so much more enjoyable for me. Like trying to figure out what he's trying to say, and I think when a movie does that, it just adds to the general enjoyment of something.
Yeah. I am looking forward to see it another time. I think it's going to be one of those that are definitely rewatchable. It's kind of what I gathered from seeing it a second time. So, do you have a rating for Parasite?
Yes.
Bong Joon Ho. Out of 5.
I obviously
what
have
would
a
you give
rating. I would give it a 5.
A 5.
And
that's generous for ya.
I know, but I legitimately sat down yesterday and I tried to figure out, if I had anything against the movie or something that I didn't like about the movie. And realistically speaking, I don't. I love the performances. I love the script. I love the camera work. The editing, I think, is some of the best editing I've ever seen.
Whoa.
I can't find anything that I don't like or any sort of beef with the movie. And to top everything off, I've seen the movie 4 times and I want to watch it again.
Yeah.
And for you and me, rewatchability is a huge decision maker. And yeah,
it's key.
So I have to give it a 5. There's no more.
I like it. I was thinking about it. I would be willing to give it a 5 for sure. The second time I saw it, like just yesterday, it made me appreciate it more. After this conversation, I'll be honest, I appreciate it a lot more. I do. However, I don't think I'm completely willing to give it a 5. I'm gonna give it 4.5, just because of the shock effect. It plays too much on the extreme for my own personal taste. Yeah, it feels, even though it's fully intentional, and I respect that. To me, I would have liked to see slightly more hints of the elephant below the room, so to say.
Yeah.
But it's great.
That's completely fair.
The entire ending too, with the smelling aspect, I feel like it's a bit too far off. So those are the 2 main things, the turning points, that it's completely insane that there's a dude living in the basement, for one, and second, that Mr. Kim just stabs the guy because he doesn't like the smell. So 4.5 for me. It's gonna have to be. For now, it might just as well increase. For sure.
No, that's fair. And I feel a lot of people are thinking that the movie's overhyped or that we're biased because we're film students, or we were film students. Now we're just unemployed.
True.
But I really think if for some reason you have stuck around and you haven't seen it, but you wanted to listen to us ramble about it, I think you should definitely give it a listen, because it's worth it. And I think it's just so much fun. But 5 stars for me. And I think your rating is completely fair.
Good.
Very well. I think with all that said, this cup of coffee is over. And thus, our conversation on Parasite is also over.
No.
And I think
finally
I will give it to you now, Algot, so you can outro us.
Let me do the outros. Let's start with Letterboxd. Please follow us. Please. We need the follows on Letterboxd.
We need the attention.
If you're at all interested, go on letterboxd.com. That is http://www.letterboxd.com. You find it in the description here. Click on it and you can follow Mao and me, or just me. That's really up to you. You'll see when we log new films that we've seen, etc., etc. Also, make sure to subscribe, follow, whatever the button says in front of you on your preferred podcast platform. We're also on YouTube. We have a video podcast version up. So if you want to see our beautiful faces, you can. Did I forget anything? I think that's pretty much it.
I think that is pretty much it.
Go on and watch Corridor Crew, their VFX artists react thingy, as well as Ingrid Bergman's documentary.
Yeah, they're both really nice. Also, since we're selling out and we're being hoarse for attention, share this podcast if you enjoy it. You know, you might have that cousin, brother, weird friend from school that you don't really want to talk about because, well, he's weird. They might they might like movies and they might like this podcast. So share. That helps us out a lot.
All right, that will pretty much about do it. Catch us next time when we talk about more movies and drink more coffee. All right, bye.